Hi, boys and girls. Today I want to continue reading the story we've been reading, which is the second book in the series, The Magic Tree House, which is called The Night at Dawn. We have main characters. Their names are Jack and Annie. They are brothers and sisters, and they have traveled by way of a magic tree house to a time when there are castles and knights. And so they are there and they are getting ready to go into the castle. So the that I'm reading now is chapter 4, and it says, "Into the castle." "I'm going to kill her," muttered Jack. He threw his stuff into his pack and moved toward the drawbridge. He hoped no one would see him. It was getting darker. It must be night. When he got to the bridge, he started across. The wooden planks creaked under his feet. He peered over the edge of the bridge. Were there any crocodiles in the moat? He couldn't tell. So remember, he has a book that's about this time. And that's how they ended up here, because Annie opened the book and said, "I want to go here." And so in it, he had a picture of a castle. And one of the things it said is some people thought they kept crocodiles in the moat. So he was wondering, do they really? "Halt!" That means stop. Someone shouted. A guard on top of the castle wall was looking down. Jack dashed or ran fast across the bridge. He ran through the castle gate and into the courtyard. So that's the part that's open once you get into the castle. From inside the castle came the sounds of music, shouting, and laughter. Jack hurried to a dark corner and crouched down. That means he's bending down. He shivered as he looked around for Annie. Torches lit the high wall around the courtyard. It's like a light. The courtyard was nearly empty. Two boys led horses that clocked over the gray cobblestones. Cobblestones are like stone. It would have been, instead of their road being made of concrete or asphalt, they had these blocks that's kind of like bricks almost. "Nay!" Jack turned. It was the knight's black horse. "Psst!" He peered or looked into the darkness. There was Annie. She was hiding behind a well in the center of the courtyard, and she waved at him. So a well would have been where they would have gone to get their water, because they would not have had water like faucets like we do. Jack waved back. He waited till the boys and horses disappeared inside the stable. Then he dashed to the well. "I'm going to find the music," whispered Annie. "Are you coming?" "Okay," Jack said with a sigh. They tiptoed together across the cobblestones. Then they slipped into the entrance of the castle. Noise and music came from a bright room in front of them. They stood on one side of the doorway and peeked in. "The feast in the great hall," whispered Jack. He held his breath as he stared in awe. When someone's in awe of something, it's like you're amazed by it. A giant fireplace blazed at one end of the noisy room. Antlers and rugs hung on the stone walls. Flowers covered the floor. Boys in short dresses carried huge trays of food. In that time period, they would have worn, it would have looked like a dress, and they would have been the people who would have been taking food, kind of like a waiter or a waitress. Dogs were fighting over bones under the tables. People in bright clothes and fancy hats strolled among the crowd. Some played funny shaped guitars, some tossed balls in the air, some balanced swords on their hands. So it's kind of like they're in the middle of where people are eating, and they are the entertainment. They would have been juggling the balls like a juggler, and playing the music and doing different acts to entertain the people that would have been around. Men and women in capes and furs sat at long, crowded wooden tables. "I wonder which one is the knight," said Jack. "I don't know," whispered Annie, "but they're eating with their fingers." Suddenly, someone shouted behind them. So she's noticing instead of having forks and knives and spoons, they're using their fingers to eat. Predict why that would be. Why would they be using their fingers to eat instead of those things? Jack whirled around. A man carrying a tray of pies was standing a few feet away. Who art thou? He asked angrily. Now, this would have been a time period when they used different language than what we do. Not the difference between English and Spanish, but they would have talked differently. Who art thou? What do you think that means? They're just saying, who are you? That's what that meant. Okay. Jack, squeaked Jack. Annie, squeaked Annie. Then they ran as fast as they could down a dimly lit hallway. So they are running to where it's not very bright. I think I'm going to go ahead with the next chapter. Chapter 5 is Trapped. Oh, come on, cried Annie. Jack raced behind her. Were they being followed? Here, quick. Annie dashed toward a door off the hallway. She pushed the door open. The two of them stumbled into a dark, cold room. The door creaked shut behind them. Give me the flashlight, said Annie. Jack handed it to her, and she switched it on. Yikes! A row of knights right in front of them. Okay, so this is where they find, but I want you to look at that carefully. What do you notice when you look at it? Yeah, there's no heads on the top. Okay. Annie flicked off the light. Silence. They aren't moving, Jack whispered. Annie turned the light back on. They're just suits, Jack said. Without heads, said Annie. Let me have the flashlight a second, said Jack, so I can look in the book. Annie handed him the flashlight. He pulled out the castle book. He flipped through the pages until he found what he was looking for. So what page do you think he might be looking for? Maybe something to do with the suits of armor. So let's see. Jack put the book away. It's called the armory, he said. It's where armor and weapons are stored. He shined the flashlight around the room. Oh, man, whispered Jack. The light fell on shiny breastplates, leg plates, arm plates, on shelves filled with helmets and weapons, on shields, spears, swords, crossbows, that means a bow and arrow, clubs, something you would hit with, and battle axes. There was a noise in the hall. Voices. Let's hide, said Annie. Wait, said Jack. I've got to check on something first. Hurry, said Annie. It'll take just a second, said Jack. Hold this. He handed Annie the flashlight. He tried to lift a helmet from a shelf. It was too heavy, because remember, it weighs almost 40 pounds. It's heavy. He bent over and dragged the helmet over his head. The visor slammed shut. Oh, forget it. It was worse than having a 5-year-old on your head, more like having a 10-year-old on your head. Not only could Jack not lift his head, he couldn't see anything either. Jack, Annie's voice sounded far away. The voices are getting closer. Turn off the flashlight, Jack's voice echoed inside the metal chamber. He struggled to get the helmet off. Suddenly he lost his balance and went crashing into other pieces of armor. So I want you to predict, what do you think is going to happen? The metal plates, it doesn't mean a plate, it just means the pieces that they would have put on. And weapons clattered to the floor. So what do you think is going to happen? Because they've made noise, right? Jack lay on the floor in the dark. He tried to get up, but his head was too heavy. He heard deep voices. Someone grabbed him by the arm. The next thing he knew, his helmet was yanked off, and he was staring into the blazing light of a fiery torch. Okay. Chapter 6 is ta-da! All right, we'll find out what happens with Jack and Annie at the castle.